Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. The friends and family members of a 33-year-old South African man are outraged and demanding answers this week after he allegedly died while being illegally detained by security guards when he was accused of shoplifting at a supermarket. The whole situation began on the evening of May 19th, when the man in question, 33-year-old Bandile Shabala, was with two of his friends inside of a ShopRite store at the Ratanda Mall, just outside the town of Heidelberg. As the men were walking around the store, they were allegedly stopped by security guards who accused them of stealing some chocolate. Bandile's two friends managed to escape, however, he was grabbed by the guards who told him he was being detained. Rather than calling the police, though, it's alleged that the security guards instead took the 33-year-old to one of the supermarket's freezers. After locking him inside, they left. While it's unclear whether the guards intended to keep Bandile trapped for an extended period of time, or they simply forgot about him, one thing is certain. Nobody opened the freezer again until the following morning, roughly 11 hours later. By that time, the 33-year-old was dead. An autopsy later confirmed he had died of hypothermia. News of what had happened spread quickly, prompting a crowd of angry residents in the area to gather around the business and demand justice. According to reports, tensions quickly escalated when some in the group threw stones, and private security responded by shooting rubber bullets into the crowd. Eventually, though, police were apparently able to get the situation under control. They also launched an investigation into what had happened. When authorities spoke with locals, they said that this was far from the first time that they had heard of someone being locked in the freezer at the supermarket. They claimed that the manager and security staff at the ShopRite regularly engaged in this kind of vigilante activity, though the vast majority of accused shoplifters were apparently released after being locked in the freezer for about 30 minutes. According to local news sources, 2 security guards at the store have now been arrested in connection with Bandile's death and have been charged with murder, assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and kidnapping. It has also been reported that the family of the 33-year-old victim are preparing to sue ShopRite over his death. The situation is still developing. Authorities in Switzerland say that they are investigating a disturbing case after a young man went on a violent rampage in a popular park last week, killing one person and injuring at least one other. The whole thing began shortly before 8 p.m. on May 21st, when police in the municipality of Männedorf were called to Villa Alma Park, located on the shore of Lake Zurich. They were alerted by several concerned community members who said that they had witnessed a man who appeared to be behaving erratically and attacking people in the middle of the park. Officers rushed to the scene, where they discovered a woman lying on a gravel path. She was suffering from serious injuries and appeared to have lost a lot of blood. Emergency responders attempted to perform life-saving measures, though sadly they were unsuccessful. The woman was pronounced dead a short time later. In the meantime, police arrested the alleged perpetrator, a 19-year-old man who was naked and who was confirmed to be the same person that witnesses had described. One other victim, a 50-year-old man, was also treated for injuries, though these were apparently minor. At the time of this recording, neither the suspect nor the victims had been identified by name. However, all 3 are said to be citizens of Switzerland. The woman who was killed was 35 years old and is believed to have been jogging at the time that she was attacked. Police likewise have not confirmed the weapon that was used in the attack, though some reports have alleged that it was a rock. While it appears that authorities are still trying to piece together the exact details of what happened in the case, according to local news sources who spoke with some of the witnesses, it seems that the 19-year-old suspect may have been in the park with his girlfriend in the lead-up to the crime. One witness in particular told Swiss news outlet NZZ that the 19-year-old suspect was sitting on a bench with his girlfriend when suddenly he got up and started shouting. He then calmed down a bit, and at first it seemed like things might be okay. However, before long he had started yelling again and began removing his clothes. At this point, the girl he was with ran away, and the man began attacking random people. It's believed that he did not know the 35-year-old woman he killed or the 50-year-old man who was injured. Because of these details, it has been widely reported that the 19-year-old suspect may have been suffering some kind of psychotic episode at the time of the attack. So far, police have not confirmed this, though they have stated that the man has a history of mental illness. At the time of this recording, the 19-year-old remains in custody. Authorities in the French city of Lyon say that 4 people have been left injured this week, at least 2 critically, following a terrifying knife attack on board a local subway train. According to reports, the whole thing began around 2:30 p.m. on May 26th, when police were alerted by numerous people about a man who was acting erratically and wielding a knife aboard a train on Line B of Lyon's TCL metro system. Unfortunately, that situation escalated just moments later when the suspect allegedly began attacking and stabbing several people while the train was traveling between De Bourg and Place Jean Jaurès stations. When the subway pulled into that latter station, the man reportedly fled, after which he began hiding in a nearby bakery. He apparently ditched the weapon along the way. However, this, as well as the suspect, were found by officers responding to the scene a short time later. In the meantime, emergency responders tended to 4 people in the metro station, all of whom had suffered injuries during the attack. Thankfully, all of them are expected to survive, though 2 are said to have been in critical condition at the time that they were rushed to the hospital. None of the victims have been identified at the time of this recording, though the most seriously injured person is said to be a 17-year-old from the West African nation of Guinea. Likewise, the name of the alleged perpetrator has not been released. However, he has been identified as a 27-year-old of Moroccan origin. The man is said to have been living illegally in France at the time of the attack and had been under orders to leave the country since 2022. In terms of a motive, police say that the crime was likely the result of mental illness. Though the man has no previous criminal record that police were aware of prior to this week's incident, he had reportedly been hospitalized numerous times for psychiatric issues. Currently, the 27-year-old remains in custody, and police say that they are conducting an ongoing attempted homicide investigation. Representatives from England's Dorset police say that they have finally arrested a suspected murderer this week, days after he allegedly stabbed 2 women during a terrifying nighttime attack on a local beach, killing one of them. The disturbing situation began just before 11:45 p.m. on May 24th, when police in the coastal town of Bournemouth were alerted about a knife attack in progress on Xiaochang beach. Officers raced down to the beach area where they found 2 women suffering from serious injuries. Both had been stabbed multiple times and required immediate medical attention. While one of the victims, identified only as a 38-year-old woman, was rushed to a hospital in critical condition. Sadly, the other, 34-year-old Amy Gray, didn't make it. She was pronounced dead by emergency responders on the beach shortly before 12:30 a.m. In the aftermath of the horrifying attack, police cordoned off a large section of the beach and surrounding area, launching a massive investigation. Early on, it was believed that the person responsible had been located, as it was announced that a 17-year-old had been taken into custody in connection with the crime. However, on May 27th, police revealed that the teen had been released after new information ruled him out as a suspect. On the same day, Dorset police released images taken of a young man dressed in a dark hooded jacket, who they now identified as the prime suspect. These images had reportedly been taken from CCTV cameras recording in the area around the time of the attack. Members of the public were asked to reach out with any information they had concerning this man's identity, as well as any additional surveillance or dashcam footage they might have. In particular, police said that they were interested in footage recorded between the night of May 24th and morning of May 25th, which had been taken in the areas of Durley Roundabout, Westcliff Gardens, Durley Gardens, or Westcliff Drive. Finally, on May 29th, authorities provided another update, saying that they had arrested a new man in connection with the case. This man is said to be 20 years old and from the Croydon area of London, and is currently being held on suspicion of murder. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, no further details have been provided. In the meantime, friends and family members of Amy Gray's have made a flood of tributes to her on social media, sharing their shock and sadness over her sudden and tragic death. The 34-year-old reportedly worked as a personal trainer, was a passionate volunteer head coach for a local women's soccer club, and was a loving wife and mother. Not much has been released about the other victim of the crime, though according to the latest reports, she is still fighting for her life in a local hospital. The situation is still developing. Representatives from Japan's Kanagawa Prefectural Police released a major update in a nearly 5 months-long investigation this week, announcing that they had arrested 5 people in connection with the death of a man whose body was found under disturbing circumstances late last year. The case began shortly after 10 p.m. on December 29, 2023, when a fisherman spotted a large suitcase on the banks of the Tama River in the city of Kawasaki. The fisherman alerted police, who collected the bag and opened it early the next morning. When they did, they were horrified to find a man's body inside. The man, later identified as 46-year-old Tadayuki Hara, had been shoved into the suitcase with his arms and legs bound. An autopsy revealed that he had been strangled and that he had likely been dead for several days before his remains were discovered. After launching an investigation, police are said to have initially focused on a work-related problem being the reason for Tadayuki's murder. The 46-year-old was a content creator and live streamer, and social media posts he made days before his body was found apparently suggested he might have been involved in some kind of dispute. However, after some further digging, police were reportedly able to recover security camera footage taken from an area about a mile upstream of the original crime scene in Tokyo's Ota ward. This is where authorities now believe that the suitcase was actually dumped into the Tama River. The footage allegedly pointed to 5 suspects, the main one being Tadayuki's ex-girlfriend, 32-year-old Mai Nishitaka. According to police, Mai and Tadayuki were in a relationship together until September of 2023. When they broke things off, Tadayuki was apparently critical of the 32-year-old and her family, and posted several videos about his problems with them online. This apparently angered Mai, who allegedly began conspiring with the other suspects to kill Tadayuki. Those other suspects are said to be Mai's parents, 53-year-old Masahiro and 51-year-old Miho Nishitaka, her brother, 34-year-old Shogo Nishitaka, and her new boyfriend, 39-year-old Shuhei Iwaki. All 5 were recently arrested on suspicion of abandonment of a corpse. Though the investigation is still ongoing at the time of this recording, and none of the suspects have yet been charged with murder. In a statement on May 26th, Kanagawa Prefectural Police alleged that all but one of the suspects admitted to being involved in the crime. Mai, in particular, reportedly told police that she wanted Tadayuki dead over the videos he made because, quote, "I didn't like being slandered." The investigation continues. Authorities in the Belgian city of Antwerp say that a disgraced entrepreneur is in trouble with the law once again this week, after he was allegedly caught violating the terms of his house arrest following a harebrained scheme that involved attaching his court-ordered ankle monitor to his dog. According to reports, 35-year-old Ladislas Leys was once a big name in Belgium's food and nightlife space. After opening a series of ambitious luxury restaurants in some of the country's biggest cities that were known for their innovative concepts, the entrepreneur generated a lot of media attention around himself beginning around 2017. However, when the buzz died down, so did the cash that Leys was bringing in. The situation led to a series of contentious bankruptcy proceedings in which the 35-year-old repeatedly defrauded his creditors. While he was ultimately convicted of charges related to this and ordered to repay nearly 300,000 euros, that wasn't the end of the implosion of his reputation. Near the end of 2023, he was also convicted of sexually assaulting a 19-year-old student. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison for this, though most of the sentence was suspended and he was allowed to serve his time under house arrest. It seems that the slap on the wrist only confirmed in Leys' mind that he was above the law, because a couple of weeks ago he apparently pushed his luck even further. According to police, despite being under house arrest, the 35-year-old decided to attend a 3-day dance festival in the province of Limburg called Extrema Outdoor, in order to trick police into thinking that he was still at home. Before leaving for the festival earlier this month, he allegedly cut off his ankle monitor and attached it to his British bulldog. Of course, police were not fooled. The monitor alerted them to suspicious activity, and it was discovered that Leis was not home when police went to check on him at his residence. Even if the plan with the ankle monitor had somehow worked, though, it's likely that the 35-year-old's brazen activity on social media would have given everything away. Apparently, he was posting stories of himself at the festival to his Instagram page regularly while he was there. Realizing at some point that he was busted, Leis turned himself into police on May 20th, presumably after the festival was over. At the time of this recording, the 35-year-old is still in custody, though it remains to be seen whether he will now be forced to serve the rest of his sentence in prison or whether he will be granted house arrest once again. Authorities in China's Hubei province say that 8 people are dead this week and 1 other is injured, following a knife attack perpetrated by a man said to be suffering from mental illness. According to reports, the situation unfolded at around 9 a.m. on May 23rd in a rural town in Hubei's Xiaochang County. It began when a local 53-year-old man, identified only by the last name Lu, allegedly stabbed his elderly mother to death before running out into the street and attacking several more people. Police responded quickly to the scene and were able to take Lu into custody, though sadly many of the victims could not be saved. 7 more people were killed during the stabbing spree, and 1 other person was injured. It has been reported that most of the deceased victims were elderly people, though at least one of those killed was a 2-year-old child. Following Lu's arrest, authorities learned from witnesses that he had been experiencing a mental health episode at the time of the attack, and that it was well known that he had been struggling with psychiatric issues for many years. However, he had never been given any kind of formal treatment. This had been suggested to Lu's parents previously, including by a village official about a decade earlier. However, his father reportedly refused, saying that he would look after his son and take responsibility if anything happened. Locals that knew Lu told police that he had a reputation for being aggressive, though he had never actually harmed anyone before this week. At the time of this recording, the 53-year-old remains in custody. It remains to be seen if police plan to charge him over the incident or whether he will now be sent for mandatory treatment. The daughter of a 63-year-old Western Australian man is outraged and demanding answers this week after she claims that she and her mother repeatedly sounded the alarm about his domestic abuse towards them and were ignored, only for him to shoot and kill 2 close family friends. The tragic situation began at around 4:30 p.m. on May 24th, when police were called to a residence on Berkeley Crescent in the Perth suburb of Floreat. Officers arrived to find 3 people, all of whom were suffering from gunshot wounds. They were identified as the homeowner, 59-year-old Jennifer Petelchik, her 18-year-old daughter Gretel, and a 63-year-old man named Mark Bombara. Based on evidence found at the scene, it allegedly became clear that Bombara had shot the 2 women before turning his weapon on himself. Bombara and Jennifer were pronounced dead at the scene, while Gretel later succumbed to her injuries after being taken to a nearby hospital. While the exact circumstances of what unfolded during the terrifying attack have not been released at this time, the motive behind the awful crime has now been widely reported. It's alleged that Mark Bombara killed Jennifer and Gretel while attempting to hunt down his estranged wife. According to Bombara's adult daughter, Ariel, she and her mother fled their family home back on March 28th in order to escape her father's increasingly violent and abusive behavior. She claims that there had been domestic incidents in their household for some time, but it was at this point that her mother finally decided to separate from Bombara and end their marriage. Between March 30th and April 2nd, Ariel says that she and her mother contacted police on 3 separate occasions to warn them about her father. She explained that they were in fear for their lives and specifically wanted to alert them to the fact that he had a number of guns, some of which she claimed were unaccounted for. Ariel now says that these warnings were not only ignored, but that police did not seem concerned at all about her father's weapons since he was a legal gun owner. He reportedly owned 13 firearms in total, at least one of which was a handgun allegedly used in the crime, and was one of the supposedly unaccounted for weapons that Ariel had warned them about. During one conversation with police, Ariel says that she was told by an officer, quote, "Oh, don't worry, we know all about the guns." On April 2nd, Ariel and her mother were reportedly given a police escort back to their property in Mossman Park to collect some of their belongings. At this point, she says that she once again pleaded with police to grant them a 72-hour temporary protective order, though this was apparently denied. After that, the women felt that they had no other option but to take their safety into their own hands and try their best to stay hidden from Bambara. On May 24th, the 63-year-old showed up at the Petelchik residence because Jennifer was his estranged wife's best friend, and he believed that this is where she would be hiding out. Indeed, it appears that the woman did stay at the home at some point, though she wasn't there at the time Bambara arrived. Bambara allegedly murdered Jennifer and Gretel when he was unable to find his ex-wife. In a scathing statement this week, Ariel criticized the police response to the entire situation, saying that she, her mother, and the Petelchiks had all been failed by the system. That statement read in part, quote, "What my father did was an act of domestic violence. My mother and I made clear that lives were at risk, and we were repeatedly ignored, repeatedly failed. Those failures have cost the lives of 2 incredible women. My father should always be considered accountable for his actions. They were his and his alone. However, there are authorities who should have helped us stop him, and they failed." In response to this statement, Western Australia police said that they would be conducting an internal investigation into how the situation was handled. However, they also partially defended their actions, in particular their refusal to grant the 72-hour protective order, stating that the threshold would not have been met at the time they received the reports, and that Bambara had no prior convictions for domestic violence. The tragic incident has also renewed debates about gun control laws in Australia, with many pointing to the fact that Bambara was allowed to keep his weapons after credible threats to public safety had been raised. In a statement, the Premier of Western Australia, Roger Cook, vowed that the state would have the toughest gun laws in the country, and that he and others were now considering further action. For her part, Ariel acknowledged that these measures were important, but said that the bigger problem was that not enough is being done to protect victims of domestic violence, particularly women. In that same statement from before, she said, quote, "The gun reforms being discussed currently are an important step, but it is my unwavering belief that even without his guns, my father would have committed a horrific act of violence which likely would have claimed lives." At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.